So we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is the secretary breakout. I'm just going to quickly introduce myself and then we will get right to it. So my name is Heather Robinette. My home chapter is Alpha Omega from Kansas State University. I am currently the fraternity manager of strategic communication and engagement for AKSI. Professionally, I am a marketing manager for a tech startup here in Dallas, Texas. And my hobbies include CrossFit, photography, freelance marketing, and my two boxers, Sammy and Tumbleweed. So we're going to jump right in. So we're going to talk about the steps for recording meeting minutes. So first and foremost, it's always starting with just the basic information about the meeting. So such as the type of meeting, date, time, and place. And through HQ Docs, you're able to download a template that includes all this information. So you never have to worry about forgetting to fill that in. Second is making sure you record any motions that were voted on, who moved them, who seconded them. And as number 3 says, you do not have to create a transcript of your meeting, but more so just really the highlights, especially the motions, things like that. Because remember, at the end of the day, you are still a member and should be participating in those discussions as well. Number 4 is really just around conflicts of interest. So in the middle of a discussion, if someone does point something out, just making sure that's noted. So if anyone ever goes back through the minutes, they're able to see that was noted as well. Number 5 is referring to minutes being taken at any formal meeting, which is really your executive officer meeting as well as your chapter meeting. They should be taken at both meetings. And then number 6 is presenting those minutes at the beginning of your next meeting. And just remember then once you are done with the minutes, make sure they are uploaded to ChapterSpot. So then your chapter members can go take a look at them if they missed the meeting, as well as your RMT members. So your volunteers that you work with. Next is the chapter calendar. So really this should be something that is given out at the beginning of the semester. And ideally with the chapter success plan, you already know these dates and are able to have that calendar ready to go by the first or second meeting of the semester. And this can be done in any method, whether that's printing it out, Google Calendar, whatever works for you. But the biggest thing is making sure that your chapter members know in advance all the dates that they need to have in the calendar. Next, this slide is really just talking about your regional management team, so the volunteers that are there to support you. So first and foremost is your chapter advisor. So that's really someone day-to-day, any questions that come up, that's someone you can reach out to and who can help you answer those questions or get the answers to those questions. The section director is going to be someone who works with a couple different chapter advisors to really make sure they have the support and resources they need. And then you have your regional director who then supports the section directors and chapter advisors within the region. And then we also have the chapter advisory board. So that's going to be something that not every chapter has, but those are going to really be made up of individuals who are focused on specific areas. So whether that's finance, membership, the different areas, and they're able to then help those specific officers in those areas. And the chapter advisory board is oversaw by the the chapter advisor. And then we have regional managers, and these are going to be members of the regional management team that are focused on the region itself. So if they are a regional manager of finance, then they're helping different chapters within the area of finance as needed. And the other half of the slide is really just referring to the school itself. So just always keep in mind AKSI is a guest on your campus, and at any point in time the school can ask us to leave. So always just be mindful of that. And many of you should be aware of your faculty advisors or faculty advisor. Many times this is going to be someone you work with room reservations, things like that. It's good to stay in regular communication with them, keep them up to date on things. I always like to tell students that really they're your advocate. So if something comes up, they're that person that's there to help support you when it comes to school related things. And of course, always follow your university policies. And if there is a conflict between your school and AKSI policies, reach out to your CERC, which is Amber or Coral, and they will be able to help guide you through that. Next is the meeting structure. So this is kind of the general outline of it. So of course you have roll call, which is essentially taking attendance, which is whatever format works for your chapter. Then reading the minutes, as we talked about earlier. So really just recapping the previous meeting. The officers and committees will then do their reports. You will go over old business, new business. The brothers chat is not something you have to do, but really that would be a time where the brotherhood would be able to talk through anything that's going on, or anything within the brotherhood. The next part is discussion and balloting of pledges. So this is really kind of your chance to talk about all the different things going on with the pledges, checking in on how things are going. While you do vote on them at 3 points throughout the semester, this can be your time to make sure as you go along you already know what's going on. By the time you get to those, there aren't any surprises. So that's just something to keep in mind, is really it should be a continuous conversation. Then finally, announcements, adjourning the meeting, and singing the anthem. So the next slide is talking about voting on discipline. So this is really going to be obviously when different types of suspensions come into play. So the first one is non-attendance. So this is going to be when a member misses 3 chapter meetings in a semester, or 2 per quarter. And so this is going to be when that gets voted on. It needs to be a majority of the chapter. They also then will pass a reinstatement term. We'll get to that here in a second. That is also done by majority vote. Financial is a little bit different. It's actually an automatic suspension. And so once they have missed the due date by 30 days, they are automatically suspended. The reinstatement terms are paying the amount that they owe, and then they would be automatically reinstated. Disciplinary action, this one really varies. So ideally you have a committee that's investigating the disciplinary issue. So just depending on what it is, depends whether it's going to be unanimous or a majority vote, depending on what's happening. The one thing to keep in mind is if it is, if the committee is seeking expulsion, once the committee votes on it, the chapter votes on it, and then ultimately the fraternity board of directors will also need to approve it before it's official. We take expulsion very seriously, so it's not something you're able to just vote on and move on. So just keep that in mind. Next we have chapter spot. So really this is going to be the most critical for officers, making sure your 7 officers reported in chapters correctly. That is how communication is sent out. So that just ensures the right people are getting the right emails, making sure they know what's going on. And we will get a little bit more into the roles and whatnot here in a few slides. So next is the collegiate statuses. So this is definitely key. Ultimately, this will come down to what your chapter is being invoiced. So every semester you are invoiced for the number of collegiate members you have. So just making sure everyone is in that correct status to ensure you're not paying for someone who isn't actually participating in the chapter that semester. So these are going to be members in good standing that are enrolled at the school. Leave of absence has a couple different parts to it. So for leave of absence, if there is a study abroad, internship, or military LOA, the chapter will still need to vote on it, but it cannot be denied. So just something to keep in mind. The other type of LOAs are medical and extreme hardship. Both of those would need to be voted on by the executive board, and then the RD would also need to approve them. In situations where that person is not comfortable sharing the information with the executive board, they are able to speak directly with the RD about the situation. Suspension, so similar to what we just talked about, really that's going to be a member who should not be attending meetings and is currently in bad standing with the fraternity. That said, they are able to be reinstated once those terms are met. They are automatically reinstated and start with a clean slate. And lastly, we have the alumnus status. This is typically when someone graduates, but it can also be when someone transfers or leaves the school for whatever reason. So next we're going to talk about the reinstatement terms. So for suspension, as I said earlier, to be suspended, it's 3 unexcused absences per semester and 2 per quarter. As far as reinstatement, that really is going to vary and would be voted on by the chapter. Some common ones are listed below, such as community service hours, meeting with the exec board, things like that. It should not be fees or fines. Another thing to keep in mind is you cannot require them to attend because they should not be there since they are. Once they meet those terms, they are automatically reinstated. Financial suspension, just as we talked about earlier, basically once they miss the 30 days past due, they're automatically suspended. Once they pay that money back that they owe, they're reinstated and start with a clean slate again. For this next section, this is going to be something that's either done by the secretary or the VPM, just depending on how your chapter handles things. And really this is around just reporting of the pledges and initiates. So first and foremost, you would create a campaign. If it won't let you create a campaign, most likely you need to go close the previous one in order to allow you to create the new one. From there, you would edit the campaign. You can either use the form or just upload the list of your potential new members. And then you'll want to move them into the to be inducted status. And then once you hold induction, they would then be reported as pledges. The key thing is to make sure that once they do become a pledge, they are reported as a pledge. This will then trigger the invoice, as well as getting the right information for the pledges for their pledge process. And then at the end of that, of course, when they're initiated, you would move them into the collegiate status, which will do a similar thing where it triggers specific things to happen. So keeping that in mind, and don't wait until the end. Just remember, to be inducted is going to be when they're about to start the pledge process, and initiated is then when they become a new member. So as we talked about earlier, so as far as officer roles go, within Chapter Spot, you're able to set the different member roles. So this is where you report your officers. The one thing to keep in mind is whether you use the officer-elect positions or not, they will need to be in that status for at least 24 hours. So basically, once you set it, then it will automatically, the system will move them over into the current position. So just keeping that in mind and just making sure you're reporting those as needed. And also making sure that as you're going through and making changes, that you make all the changes you need to before you remove yourself as an officer, because once you do that, you will no longer have access to make any changes. So with that said, this slide includes some different links. There's several of them to the knowledge base, a lot of them around the template, parliamentary procedure. There's some great YouTube video playlists that you're able to check out, as well as a virtual meeting article. So with that, we're going to go ahead and open it up for questions. I want to make sure you guys have plenty of time to ask questions about this position itself, anything in general. So yeah, so I'm going to open it up to everyone.
Hey, Heather, thank you. I think that was great. We do have 2 questions actually already from the team, and they're both from Emily. First is, you had mentioned earlier on in the presentation HQ docs. Can you describe and explain what HQ docs is for us?
Yes, so within Chapter Spot, and towards the upper top menu bar, you'll see where it says HQ docs. And when you go into there, that's essentially your document repository. So that's going to be, I think it goes back 4 or 5 years now at this point, if I remember right. And so that's going to be basically where all the documents are stored. So you're able to access things such as the meeting minutes template, old chapter success plans, current chapter success plans, your login for Smarter Select, all that information is kept there. So then this is where your minutes are uploaded, so that you can always refer back to them. So in theory, you could go back 5 years and go through the meeting minutes if you really wanted to. So it's just a good place where all the documents are stored. So if you ever have any questions, it's a great resource to check out.
Great, thank you. And as Heather said, if you have any questions, please throw them into the group chat or raise your hand and we'll unmute you and you can ask Heather the question specifically. So The other question we have from Emily is, will the presentation be shared with us?
Jason, you want to answer that?
I think the answer is yes.
I mean, my understanding is yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, and we'll be sharing that with everyone. So yeah, we'll make sure you have that somehow for you. So, and then is it Catrial has a question for us. Where do we find Chapter Spot?
Great question. So actually through the community, there is a link for Chapter Spot. So pretty much ultimately everything comes back to the community. So through there, you'd be able to click on a link and it'll take you to Chapter Spot. It is a separate website, but the link is in the community. So that's kind of your place to go for everything.
Yep, absolutely. And one of the things just to note there is, because Heather said this earlier, and I just want to reemphasize that, is that it will only appear for reported chapter officers. So if you're not one of the reported chapter officers, 7 reported officers, it may not appear for you. So, yeah.
Which is also another great reason why you want to double check your officers are reported correctly. So you can make sure the correct people have access.
And
Hey.
Oh, I hit mute and then unmute by accident. There you go.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. So I'm Catriel. I'm in Beta Iota chapter at University of Buffalo, and our university chose to do like remote hybrid, like a whole sort of things. So we're trying to decide if we want to do meetings virtually or online. And yeah, the president just said earlier to do it virtually. So then are we allowed to record the meetings through Zoom?
So as in like truly record it, or as in like take minutes?
Both. I mean, just for like reference. You know how like there's a record option in Zoom? Like, I'm just curious.
Jason, do you?
Yeah, so just for clarity, the question is, are you allowed to record the meeting?
Yeah.
That is a great question. I don't know that we know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I'm going to notate that and find out, and we will be sure to get back to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions out there from the group? Emily, it's our pleasure. She had noted that it's just a thank you for the information.
Awesome.
Okay, we'll see no other questions, no other hands raised. Heather, anything else to wrap it up with?
I mean, really just if you guys ever do have any questions, just please make sure to reach out to your chapter advisor, your CERC, Amber or Coral. You know, don't hesitate to ask. You know, and even if we don't necessarily know the answer, it gives us the opportunity to find that answer, because potentially another chapter is having the same issue. So, you know, we're all learning in this together. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Everyone is here to help. So that's all I got.
Great. Well, with that, I will say thank you so much, Heather, and thank you to all of our members out there who participated tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.